is week 8 done in preparation for my standards check. A good week. Apologies, I am a day behind. I got held up on lessons yesterday, and then it was my little boy's birthday, so I needed to get back so we could do what we had planned there. So here we are on a Saturday morning. I've just finished my Saturday morning lesson, and just giving you guys an update on how the week has gone and go through some of the questions that have come in on the Facebook page. So first, I will go through how the week's been and what I've been up to. So starting off this week, I had some training with Tom Stenson, who I would definitely recommend if you're needing support, either developing as an instructor or if you have a standards check or a part 3 coming up. And things this week are really starting to fall into place in preparation for the standards check, at least in my opinion. We had the course with Knowledgeable a few weeks back now, so putting a few bits into practice that I picked up with them. Again, another course that I would recommend. Head back to the video to find that. But I had on Wednesday, I had Tom sitting in and watching a lesson. Sorry, someone's just going in their car next to me. He watched a lesson on Wednesday and then some really good feedback after that. Some of the points that came out of the feedback from Tom, a really good one. I've seen him mention it a few times on social media, and it really made sense after the lesson that he watched with me on Wednesday. And that was, don't ask questions that you don't want the answer to. And the example of that was the student came out and I asked the student, are you driving from here today or am I? Now, the student's not had that many lessons, but getting off their estate, there's quite a bad kind of closed junction. It's on an odd angle. It's turning onto a country road. And up until that point, I'd been driving to a training area. And the pupil said, I'd like to drive. So I'd given that as an option by not specifying what we were going to do. So they'd made their decision. So they was in the driver's seat. And then we had a discussion about what the goals were going to be for the lesson and how we was going to manage that. And we was going to head to a training area and the pupil was going to drive there. And again, I asked, so how much help would you like from me to get there? And their response was directions. I was like, okay, any support with the driving, any help with anything? No, I'll be okay. So again, I've asked a question and they've given me an answer. And then off we went. Now, there was a few things coming up to their unmarked junctions, really, on a housing estate. So we're quite slow, but the approach to them wasn't how I'd be doing it. So this links to something else that Tom had mentioned, kind of be confident with what you would do as a driver. And if your pupil's not doing that, why not? And how can we help them? So don't ask questions that you don't want the answer to. And what kind of fell out from that in the debrief afterwards was kind of give options. Would you like to do this or would you like to do that? Or I can support you in this way or I can support you in that way, rather than almost just free reign. So controlling the risk with options rather than just freedom. We're instructors, we're experienced. The pupil, not necessarily. So have confidence in what we're doing and how we're doing it. So that was really good. And I put that into practice straight away in my next lesson once Tom had gone, and it made a difference. I gave the pupil options based on what I knew about their experience and their ability and how I could best help them. So that really helped. And confidence again in my own decisions. If I'd be slowing down and braking, can I get a shout out, please? Yes, you can, Bradley. Hello. Thank you for watching on this Saturday morning. Right, back to the points. If I'd be braking and putting my clutch down in preparation for a junction, why is my pupil not? And where this I felt was really important, the pupil was going slow and they would have been able to deal with the situation, but it'd have been reactive. It wouldn't have been planned. They wasn't preempting it. So have confidence in what I would be doing and helping the pupil then achieve that really made a difference. So some really good points there that have been put into practice since that debrief and moving forwards. Still looking at controlling the area. And something else that was mentioned again in the training was little things that they're getting away with. So my pupil was coming around corners with their clutch down. I wasn't fully aware of it. I was aware that it had happened a few times, but not more than that. And that was one of the things that Tom mentioned. It was like you could feel it in the back that it was happening. I guess I was trying to look for patterns as to when and why it was happening, but I hadn't noticed that it was as regular as it was. So again, that watching the pupil is really important, what they're doing and why. And that's something that, again, I need to take forward. And yes, it's important for lessons, but it's definitely going to be important for my standards check. They get a 45-minute snapshot of what we're doing. And like what I tell my learners on a driving test, whatever happens on that 35 minutes of the driving, that's really a reflection of how you're going to drive every 35 minutes, at least in my opinion. So if I'm letting things slide on a 45-minute lesson with an examiner in the back, then that's what I'm doing as an instructor, and I'm going to be missing things. So I need to be on top of those little things, or what I consider to be little, because later down the line they could become quite a big issue. So watching the pupil, making sure that I'm aware of any mistakes and that they're dealt with within priorities and the goal of the lesson, but we need to be aware of it and we need to be dealing with it. So some really good points there that I have implemented straight away, and I'm looking to now focus on them going forward as well. Feeling reasonably confident, looking forward to going getting the standards check done. But that's been the week really. Have a lesson observed, make the changes that are needed, have some focus and direction within the lessons for the learner and for me. But what I'll get on to now are some questions that have come in from some of the listeners. So the first one, Stefan, how am I going to deal with the pressure from the examiner? Do you know what? I don't know. Right now, I don't feel like I'm going to be nervous. But if you'd have asked me that half an hour before I was going to meet Tom on Wednesday, and I'm like, right, he's going to be sat in the back, he's going to be watching the lesson. I'm not 100% what's going to happen in the lesson. Then yeah, I was a little bit nervous. So how am I going to deal with that pressure? I don't know, Stefan. I'm doing all the work that I can now. I feel like I'm in a good place to go and do the standards check, and I've got a couple more weeks of practice and another lesson observation yet. But I don't know. Maybe I will check in the morning of the standards check and give you all a heads up as to how I'm feeling and how I'm preparing for it. But I don't know. Nerves, pressure, that's normal. It's natural. And I think all I can do is trust that the training I've been doing and the preparation I've been doing has put me in the best possible place. On the day of the standards check, what will be will be. I guess it's a little bit like what I do with my sport. I go through a training camp ready for the competition, and on the day it's just go and do what you've been practicing, go and do what you've been training for. So it's the same kind of thing. I've been practicing, I've been training, I've been developing as an instructor. So it's just on the day, it's time to just go and show the examiner how I can help the learner develop in the most efficient way, really. Hopefully that answered that question. So we'll move on to the next ones. We've got Nick. Am I ready for a usual pupil but changed performance for the circumstance? I think so. This will link to one of your other questions, I think. But the pupil I'm taking has been observed from the back. So we had someone sat on their lesson a couple of weeks ago. And and his driving didn't really change. But I think this comes back to what I was mentioning on my training with Tom. If I'm watching the pupil and aware of their needs, and I structure the lesson around that, then really it shouldn't matter, in my opinion, on the performance of the pupil, because we're going to turn up to the test with a goal in mind. But if that changes a couple of minutes in and their driving level drops, then their need has changed at that moment in time. So I need to be adapting the lesson relevant to the student. So I feel, yeah, I'll be ready for their changed performance given what's happening on the day. But your next question, does my pupil know that I'm being tested? They don't, unless they're watching these videos. If they are watching, then yes, they know exactly what the standards check is. But I've not told my pupil that it's a standards check and what a standards check means. I've told my pupil that there's an examiner sitting in the back of the car to watch how we do the job and see what we do as driving instructors. So he knows it's going to be an examiner. He knows that they're going to be sitting in the back, and he knows that they're watching me and what I do as a job, but he doesn't know the importance of the standards check, I guess. So no, my pupil doesn't know that I'm being tested. They just think an examiner's observing. Are there any skills I regard on my weaker side? I would say yes, based on the training that I've done. I think sometimes I maybe miss little things, or I take a to raise those small mistakes to the pupil. Try and look for patterns with driving. So the example of my pupil kind of coming around junctions with the clutch still down and just allowing the car to roll and then bringing the clutch up once we've dealt with it. I try and look for patterns with that before jumping straight in on the first time it's happened. But I need to be a bit quicker with that, and I need to understand why. So that's something that I need to be wary of going into the next couple of weeks and going forward, I guess, is identifying mistakes as they're happening. Maybe not jumping on it straight away, but being aware of it, mentioning it, finding out why. So that's something I'm trying to be more aware of, and how to kind of raise that to the student and look to fix it, find out why it's happening. So yeah, that's something that I'm going to be mindful of going forward, is the small things and why they're happening. So hopefully that answers your questions, Nick. And then we've got Penny. What are my weak areas? I just mentioned that with Nick, that watching, looking for the smaller things and dealing with it that little bit earlier. And also, as I've mentioned, is giving the pupil options and not freedom, depending on the pupil. And I'll often, through a conversation, almost let them decide what we're going to be working on. And it comes back to some of the reflection that I've been doing, is getting the opinion of the pupil before offering mine. I am really preferring that, hearing the pupil's thoughts and understanding first before I give mine, but also trusting that the experience I have working with lots of different pupils over a number of years, yes, their opinion is important, but sometimes experience will shine a different light on it. So my weaker areas are spotting what needs to change earlier, raising it to their awareness earlier, and having a bit more structure in the questions and being a bit more direct. They know what they want to work on, but maybe get more specific on the help they want from me based on what I know about the pupil and their needs. if I think they might need some support coming up to some junctions, but they're like, I'd rather just have a go. Is that going to be safe? And am I managing the risk? So being a bit more direct with the questions based on what I know. So I'm not sure whether all this is sounding vague because it's based just on maybe 1 or 2 pupils or my own experience, but overall being more structured with the questions, controlling the risk and spotting small faults and dealing with them when needed. How am I going to challenge myself on those areas is Penny's next question. That's what I feel like I'm doing at the moment, and I have been since kind of Wednesday afternoon. And I'm noticing a difference in the lesson. I'm not just letting them experience everything. If I can use my experience to help speed up the learning a little bit, then that's what I'm going to do. And I've noticed a difference. It is making a difference with the learners. Sometimes we can give them the information that they need rather than trying to draw it out of them. It depends on the situation and the pupil and what we're working on and a number of factors. But sometimes just giving them the information or giving them the guidance or showing them what good looks like, because they don't know or they might not know. So I've noticed a big difference with that recently. And how am I going to know I have improved? I think it's going to be the speed of which the pupil is picking things up and I guess the amount of times I'm having to intervene for safety. And the learning as well. I do feel there's been more structure in the lessons. The learning has taken place, but the questions and the structure has really helped. And then just thinking about this as well, I will often praise good, but what I will sometimes do is get their opinion, and if they don't feel happy with it, we'll delve into that. Well, why not? What could you have done differently? When sometimes what's maybe needed is, well, okay, you might feel like that, but it was actually pretty good, because we can all be our worst critic, can't we? So giving that reassurance, we've got their opinion, we've taken it on board, but sometimes they just need that reassurance. Okay, well, you felt that that left turn didn't go too well, but I felt it did. You looked, you was aware, and you controlled the car. What more do we need? So yeah, being more confident with my experience, and what I would be doing as a driver. So yeah, I feel it has improved and it will continue to improve as I put it into place. So that's where I'm at. Definitely feeling more prepared and ready now for the standards check. Couple more weeks to put all of these things into practice, which I'm looking forward to. And I'm being watched again next week, so we will get some feedback from that and I will update you all. As it stands, I should be back next Friday, a similar time, between 2 and 2:30 next Friday, to give you all an update on how things are going and what I'm going to be doing going into my, I guess that'll be my final week of preparation, ready for the standards check. So there we go. I hope you've all got something from that. Any questions, leave it in the comments or drop me a comment on Facebook, and I will catch you all next week.